Okay, welcome everybody to November's Friday Live. Friday Live is a monthly meetup that we at the FM BetterForms organize for the community, FileMaker community. We usually talk about a combination of FileMaker stuff and BetterForms stuff and whatever else is of interest. This week we have this month I should say, we have some exciting things to announce. We're going to drop our AI assistant and talk about a few other things. Just before we get going here, I just want to mention that this meeting is recorded. We do encourage everybody to chime in and ask questions. It's not meant as a webinar or a presentation as such. So please feel free and jump into things. We have a number of items on the agenda that we've sort of prepared, and hopefully we'll do a little live coding towards the end. The main things are EngageU. We'll just mention quickly what we learned, some lessons learned from the app that we built, and we'll share with you because we learned a few things there, and our AI assistant. I want to take a couple seconds just to introduce a few new people to our team. Linshu Ren and Rashad Alam. They are, and I see some hands waving. All right. They're new in our team, and they're going to be working primarily on front end to start off with. And eventually, like everybody, we all become sort of full stack at some point in time. So please welcome them, and you'll see their faces around, and maybe we'll put them on the spot next month or something like that as well. So welcome, folks. Couple other things quick. We have some really great Friday Live coupons or promotions on, and I'm just going to do a bit of plugging here and just mention those. We have some really good discounts on licensing. Our citizen developer is about 16% off, and our pro plan is around 40 something percent off as well. So instead of $17.50, that goes to $9.99 for the first year. So it's a really good deal. Great time to jump in on that. We also have packages or discounts on consulting. Bulk hours. We have a couple new, these are kind of interesting. This is a combination of license plus consulting, and it's basically an app in a box, if you will, a small app and a medium-sized app. So it includes a number of development hours where we can work with you, or we can work turnkey. So we actually produce a final app. It really depends on the level of engagement that you want to, as a developer, that you want to have. Right, and we also have some discounts on bulk hours for consulting as well. And this becomes really popular. The hours don't expire, so you can use them anytime. Oops. It's interesting. There, we'll just manually go on here. There we go. We last month, actually earlier this month, a number of our team, we went to EngageU, and we're just going to tell you quickly about that. I know I saw Vince here in the call. I think he just came in. We actually have him in a picture here in a second. EngageU is a conference in Europe. It's the biggest conference in Europe. They had set a record this year of 200 people, and it was held in Antwerp, Belgium, and for a couple days. One of the neat things about this particular conference is what I personally liked about it, and maybe Andrew, feel free to chime in, is it was very social oriented. And I don't mean like pure social where it's like just kind of a camping trip, not that kind of social, but more at the end of every session, everybody came out into this crush area, this nice big hallway area in the venue, and people had a chance to chat up a bit and then go back into the next conference and back and forth a whole bunch of times. So there's a lot of social interaction, where some conferences there's not quite as much because of the shape of the venue. For example, .fmp doesn't have quite the same. The last two venues that they've used are not quite the same. So this one has a little bit more, encourages that social side more. So it's really good. Here's a couple pictures of Andrew presenting. We had a booth there, and he was just demonstrating some apps. And this is one of the presentation rooms here. There's Mike Burgee at our booth there. And one of the neat things also at this conference is that they had a nice social event one of the nights. Actually, 3 nights there was some social events. It was kind of a casual walking tour that was kind of last minute sort of organization thing. That was really, really cool. You got a chance to see this amazing old city. And then they had this event here, which was at the Antwerp Zoo. So that's, I guess, a ballroom or at the zoo, and you can see these amazing architecture in this old building. So it was pretty nifty. That was more of a formal dinner, and then they also had a casual sort of dinner, which was like a beer tour through a beer, whatever you call them, beer places, and then a bar at the end. So that was pretty good as well. There's just a few more shots there. And the top right there is the organizers, Jeroen and Joris, or Joris and Jeroen in that order. We did an amazing job. So special thanks for them for putting this on, because I know it's a ton of work. So we actually built an app last month. We spent maybe about a week on it. I would say it's got about 60 hours altogether, 50, 60 hours, something like that, into the app. And we featured it last week, so we won't really go too much through the app itself, or last month, sorry. And we called it Connect. And the goal of the app was to take to Engage and to let people kind of get a hands-on play around with fetching data and seeing how some of the capabilities of what BetterForms can do. So the app took advantage of a lot of sort of advanced technical features. It had internal caching. It was a progressive web app, so it was installable. It does everything almost, except for it doesn't actually work offline, but that would be just the next sort of logical step. And I wanted to, Andrew and I, we wanted to talk about some of our lessons learned. This is sort of a screenshot of the app here, and what we sort of learned by it, because this is something that was sort of new for us. We built dozens and dozens and dozens of apps, but to build one for this kind of a use case, that was something that was very different. And maybe Andrew can just kind of, feel free to chime in. Andrew, first of all, what were your thoughts of the conference? This is your first tech conference, and it's a FileMaker one. So
right. Yeah, EngageU was the first developer conference that I had the pleasure of attending, and I think it was a great experience. I had the opportunity to meet a lot of developers in the FM community and was able to connect and learn a lot from them. The city and the venue were nice, and the event ran pretty well. They held some awesome events after the conference hours as well that provided more social opportunities, and as well the ability to check out some of the cool areas of the city. The brewery tour was my personal favorite, though I'm not much of a drinker, so my alcohol tolerance wasn't quite there. I still had a good time. But yeah, the VBF Connect app was built for this event. We did show an early version in our last Friday Live, but I think we added a few new features here and there that we'll show off, as well as some lessons learned. I think one of the big things was we wanted to build this app to help facilitate our swag giveaways and giving away some of our water bottles and stickers and stuff, which didn't go quite as planned, and I'm sure you have some comments on that as well. But overall, I think it was a really cool app that was able to showcase a lot of the cool features that BetterForms offers that maybe some other solutions couldn't.
Yeah, definitely. It's really it was modeled after an inspection app. So any type of field inspection where you have a list of items, those items are sort of categorized, and excuse me, and the user of the app would check them off and maybe take some pictures and things like that. So we tried to incorporate some gamification into that, and that's really is a whole science on its own. And I would say the gamification wasn't a great hit by any means. We did see people use the app. We had 30 plus people. There's only out of 200 in a conference, 15%, so it's not bad. Actually use the app and actually make legitimate posts. Just in case anybody hasn't seen it, maybe I'll pull it up here quick. This is the dev version, but it's okay. It works just the same. So basically, this is the app, and it would normally be on a mobile phone, so it would sort of normally look like that on your phone. And they would go through, and if I'm pulling this up on a desktop, it has feature detection. So the app detects whether you're on a desktop or mobile device, so you wouldn't see the screen on mobile, and it prompts you to install it. We found that we had to walk people still through the installation process. I'm not sure. We don't really know if anybody installed it um, without our help, but that was an interesting thing. So when you're making these PWAs, I think one of the lessons learned there is if you want somebody to install the app, there has to be some buy-in a little bit. Like they're already using it, and it must be if you want them to do something, it has to reduce the friction in the future. And I think that would be the takeaway from that. So what we found is we modified sort of, let me just continue here for a second. And so once you're inside the app, you end up with this at these little challenge levels. And they fill out some different things. One thing that I think was really, really successful in this aspect was the fact that we could dynamically change the content of the UI. So this was we talked about how this works last week, so I won't get into the details, but I'll just mention it for the new people here. So it says, for example, it says enter a nickname, and then you can just enter a nickname, and it pulls your old answer up. But if I say hello in your language, there are 2 fields here now, so it's a totally different UI. And that was really, really key, because on the fly, we could quickly change the questions that we wanted to ask, and we could just dial it in without having to change any UI. So that was a real, I think that was a good solid takeaway for approach to building some type of dynamic interface. Andrew, you mentioned something about the photos.
Yeah, the photos were a bit iffy. It worked fine. Obviously, when they hit take photo, it would just take whatever photo at that point in time. But once they hit the button, they don't really understand that the photo has already been taken, and then the camera is still going. On top of that, the connection at the venue wasn't like amazing, so it took a bit longer to upload the photo than usual. So you're kind of stuck in that little state there.
Right. So that's interesting, because I'm just wondering what we could do to mitigate that. The photo is going directly from the app to S3 right into a bucket. So we're using UPI as a module, and it's pretty performant in terms of handling big files. It can even parallelize parts of the file, and it can make it multi-part and stuff like that as it uploads. So it's pretty useful. But there is a pause. There is a couple seconds, because a picture from a phone is quite large. So we could probably resample that picture down right on the device and then send it up, and that would be significantly smaller. So that would be another takeaway if you're building these kinds of apps, and you're worried about somebody acquiring these pictures and you don't need the high resolution, is resample it quick. It's not hard to do. And you can upload that. I thought the progress bar was pretty good. Tell us your favorite coding developer thing. Thing 1 says to thing 2, where's thing 0? Right. So I thought that was pretty good. As soon as I fill that out and it goes back to the other page, my progress kind of animates up. And I thought the timing was pretty good. When I watch people do those kinds of things, they go back and they would see their task. So that was a good win. We had originally had the menu bar hidden in the beginning part of the app. So when you went to this homepage, it was turned off here. And then we decided, I think last week, after doing some initial testing with everybody, we turned that back on. It just made more sense. As for navigating around, I thought it was going to be visually cluttering, but it wasn't at all. We stole some of the copy from our marketing website, which is built in BetterForms, and we literally just copied and pasted it in here. So this is actually all dynamic data here. And that way we can turn that on and off, so we can use this app for a demonstration in the future. I think that was something else. The prizes, we ended up changing. We had a lot of water bottles. And special thanks to Parnas and Marcus in Sweden, who helped supply us those water bottles, and they're really, really nice. And we're going to be giving them away as we still have some left over, so we'll be giving those as swag. And we wanted to make sure that we didn't have to take any home, so we kind of lowered the entrance barrier. And basically, if people just try the app and install it, they got a water bottle. So we got lots of interaction that way, and that seemed to be good enough. So I would say another lesson was to make that entrance barrier as low as possible. And this is something that we sort of knew going in. Pearson had mentioned it. Rashad had mentioned it as well. And, we had some of that sort of knowledge going in, but we said, let's give it a try. You never know. And we did get people posting the jokes and stuff. So that was actually pretty good. Like people did actually do take part in that. So it wasn't a flop. It was just the barriers need to be relatively simple, I think. We didn't have any technical issues, which was nice because you never know. This is the first launch of any app and it has nothing to do with the framework. It's like everybody's built a FileMaker app and then launched it and next realized that you missed a button or, you're finding all or something like that. So that was good. There was no technical issues. So we did enough functional testing. We tested it in the last Friday Live and we also tested it just playing around with the app ourselves. What we didn't do though is the real world testing where we're testing in an actual venue of things. And it's not so much from the upload and download speed, but I would say it's from the psychology of people. So that was something that was another lesson learned there, is to really kind of test those things out a little bit more. I think people really understood the usefulness of, we wanted to promote progressive web apps because it's a feature we just shipped, and we wanted to promote that fairly, make sure people realize this is something that you can do really easily. So I think that was a success. And I mentioned that we modified some of the tasks. Anything else you think, Andrew? If you're going to do it again?
Turns out developers don't really like stickers, and maybe we could, have some swag item that they'd be more interested in.
It's funny because some communities love stickers, and I think picking the things that you're going to give away, the motivational items, was key. Our water bottles were a big success, and we did give away some T-shirts as well. But the water bottle was the main one that we wanted to give to to at least we gave about 70 of them away, so we wanted to really promote that.
Some of the mom developers requested to have the mom developer sticker, which we only had the dad stickers.
Yeah. So we'll have to get some mom developer stickers. This was just a stock clip art, right? So that we grabbed. So we'll have to do that. If anybody's looking for stickers in general, we use Sticker Mule and they're not too bad. They have these sales that come on from time to time, so they're pretty good that way. I noticed a lot of in the swag bag, there were a number of pretty decent swag, like a coffee mug, and I think there was some chopsticks that were branded and squishy toys, and there's a number of stickers as well. And I think looking back, going to one of these conferences again in terms of swag to actually physically give away, not so much from the app. One thing that we did realize is make sure you bring something that's not going to, or give away something to somebody that they can take especially in Europe, they can throw it in a European carry-on, which is kind of smaller. So that was another takeaway there, but that's more from a marketing aspect. Anyhow, that's how we did our app. It turned out to be a pretty good hit. We did have people, here's hello from the UK, and this is Andy here, and you'll see him in the meetup soon, and Philip and so on. So there's some people did take some different pictures. I wouldn't say the quality of the pictures was like, they weren't cropped the best, but we did have some good turnout on within the app. So that was good. Here's somebody took a picture from while we were presenting and so on. So we did actually get some usage out of the app, which is kind of neat to see. All right, I'll leave it at that, I think, unless we can think of anything else, any other items there. So I want to talk about our main thing today, and what we're just dropped this week is our AI assistant. And it was something that we originally built almost a year ago. And we couldn't really send it to release it because there were some limitations in terms of the APIs. We're using OpenAI, and there's other options out there now. Anthropic and Hugging Face, Happy Face. Hugging Face has a whole bunch of different models that we probably can use now. But OpenAI has been making pretty good progress. So as an API supplier, they've added a lot of features over the past 6 months. One of those features is functions. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the reason we couldn't really release it too early is because it was limited, it was kind of slow, and it wasn't consistent in turning JSON, and there's a whole bunch of hoops to jump through, and it's still not perfect by any means. This whole working with these LLMs, it's a whole different kind of world. You know, I was saying that we were talking to Vincent, I think it was, we were talking, and this is the first time in computer history, to my knowledge, that we don't have computer programs running computer languages, meaning every language has some kind of variable instantiation, some kind of calculation engine, maths of some sort, string manipulation, whatever it is. And then there's some kind of conditional branching. And then finally, there's some kind of iterator, some kind of looping mechanism, whether you call it self, like go to the top of the program or something, some kind of jumping. So this is the first time that we actually we can do something can produce an answer, and a different type of answer, and we don't have any control over it. Well, or at the moment anyway. And I think that technology is changing quite a bit, that we can dial these things in and control them a little bit more. So we think. But just recently, OpenAI came out with GPT-4 and the turbo version, which is their faster version, and it's a little bit cheaper as well. We were using 3.5 version of their API model, and that was okay, but there was some issues with that, and it required a lot of finagling just to get it to even sort of work. So what I want to do is I want to demonstrate some of the things you can do with this, and we'll just jump right into the fun stuff here. And this is available for everybody already now. It got shipped last night and made active, or yesterday, I think it was. So I'm just going to jump in and I'll show you the kinds of things that we can do here. And I think it's pretty neat. And again, this is early. This is not, you're not going to instantly say, create me an app and then go to your client and say, yeah, I'm going to bill you for 50 hours. And I just made this up with a prompt. It's not going to happen. And I don't know if that will ever totally happen, but nonetheless, what I'll do is I've got a number of different demos here, and I was going to start with the end result, and then I'll recreate the result of how we did that. So we'll start with this guy here. So here's an example of a card display of a bunch of events, and I have these events in FileMaker over here. So let me pull that up. And we're going to pull this data, and I'll show you how everything kind of works. And then all my examples are going to be sort of following the same place. So in FileMaker, I have a table of events, and these are just technical talks that I've given. And they have a flag that says is published, and there's some information basically on each one of the talks. And here it is over here, produced. So how do we do that? So how do we get to there? So I'm just going to jump into our page builder here. And I'm just going to erase this data here for a second. I've already taken a snippet of that data that came from FileMaker, and you can see it here. I've actually have 2 events, just 2 of them on this page, just so that the AI, the assistant, gets an idea of the type of data and the exact field names that I'm using in FileMaker. And from here, we basically say something pretty simple. We say create a card grid of events and include, we'll just leave it at that, if events. Let's try that. Start with that. Make it dark mode look. And one of my favorite parts about having this AI, if you've ever communicated with me, is it's really good with typos. So I'm probably just going to get worse. So the AI goes off, and we'll talk about how this works behind the scenes. It goes off and it does this. This is an early version. Later on, we'll probably stream this information live. And you see it's already come back, and I'm just going to adjust the responsive view here. And it's come back, and it's not bad. The text isn't quite the right color there. Probably need to dial that in a little bit. And I notice these things are kind of up and down, and there's a dollar here, and there's some things like that. But this is right with one prompt so far, right? And with the data that we've got from FileMaker, actual real data. So we've already gotten this far. So that's not bad. Now we want to maybe dial this in a little bit. So I'm going to say it's called clamping, is when you reduce it, you show a maximum number of lines. So it's line clamp the description to 4 lines. Lines. Make the title white. I'll leave it at that, I guess. So sorry, I hit enter. And let's see what we come back with here. I wish we had a faster API. And then the funny thing is, you have to wait a whole 15, 20 seconds sometimes, as compared to messing around for hours. And okay, so we've changed the text to white. I don't even know where it is in here. And we've line clamped. You can see there's an automatic ellipsis on the end here. So we've line clamped our description. We could probably add a read more or something like that, but it's not bad. But let's just save it and see what it looks like in, oops, here, let me do this. Every time I hit this button by mistake, it leaves a little artifact. No, it's good. Okay. Let's save that, and we'll save that, and let's go to our UI here. So this is what we got now out of the box with 2 prompts so far. 2 prompts. It's already responsive. Right out of the box. We've clamped the lines, not bad, but the running thing here kind of goes up and down. It's got the status, which is kind of neat. So it's smart enough to realize that in my source data, I have a key called status is running, and that's the status coming from over here. Here it is here. This one's on hold, and so on. So it's got that information on hold, and what's this one over? Right there. So it's got the right statuses and everything. So it understood what's the stuff that's in here, which is kind of cool. Now let's fix it up a little bit more. So this is kind of how you'd go about doing this kind of prompting a bit more. So I'd go back into my editor here, and I would say, let's add a register now button. No, register button. Have copy say register dollar, what is it, what's an example, 999, etc. So let's see how it does it. And if you've used GPT before, you know that prompting is the way you word things and all that stuff makes a huge difference. That's going to be our new programming, I think, to some degree. So that does the same thing applies here. Okay, it's not bad, but it also didn't combine it with the price, right? So I can say, since we have the price in the button, remove it, and place button and status on same row. Let's try that. And we keep dialing it in. So you can do these kinds of things. And of course, this is a great start. So if you already have some intermediate level skills in HTML, you can jump right in here and you can modify things a little bit. But again, with the prompting, you can usually dial it in pretty decent. There we go. So it put it on the same row, and it removed the other item. Right? Let's see how that looks now. Let's save that. And it's pretty good, but what would you change on here, right? I know Pearson would say, well, let's move these to the bottom here. I think he would anyway. And let's move these all to the bottom. I want all of these description height bodies the same height. And so it looks a little bit more consistent, and then we're done. So we come back in again, we go back in here, and we would see this on here too if I made the screen a little wider. Oops. Like that, you can see it there. Okay, so I'm going to say make the description areas the same height. So so status and button are always at bottom. All right. And then Give it a second again. And you will find that it does take a little longer if you have bigger body copy. All right, so I think we're done. So let's check it out. Looks pretty good there. So let me save again, automatically refreshes. And we could probably line clamp this as well, but we basically have finished UI. If we wanted to add a little header in there, maybe I could add my events or something like that. Let me grab an HTML block and let's paste that in the top. And I'm just going to clean up this there. All right. And let's create a header. Let's do this, something like create a dark theme header for my events page and say my events, my tech talks, something like this. If you've already created a dark theme, it doesn't look like you created a dark theme. So here's where, again, this is where I can tell you exactly what happened here. So wrangling OpenAI or these LLMs to produce high quality JSON in return is a bit challenging. And sometimes it came back, it says I've created this, but it didn't really do it. We do have an undo button and you can just prompt it again. And the randomness in there will actually, sometimes it'll work again. So you have to be aware of that. We'll try to work out these bugs over the upcoming months. If you want to report bugs. Yeah, see, this is interesting here. There's something odd about it that it's saying that it's returned some data, but it hasn't here. So that might be a bit of a bug on our side, or it might be something weird about the way the API is returning data. If you want to report a bug, there's a bug feature that you can just click on here, and then you can report a bug. I'm gonna update that, and keep editing, leave, and you can report a bug, and it'll go automatically into our tracking. So that is that's our first demo. Any questions about that so far?
What are you sending out to the API?
All right, so that's a really great question. So what we're doing here is let me show you one other. Actually, no, we'll jump into how it works first, and then I'll show you some more examples. So basically, what's happening is in the front end here. In the front end of our page, we're typing a prompt. This is sort of the assistant chat box here. We're taking that prompt. We're also sending the code that you have on the page. So that is this code here. We're sending this code, and we're also sending the development data model as well, because most of the time your code is dynamic to the model. So we're taking this data here. So we're sending this plus your prompt, plus our prompting on top of that. And we're sending that up back into our logic. That is assembling that together, and it's calling OpenAI's API, and it's using the chat completions. And do chat. And this has changed quite a bit over the past year as well, but it's using the chat completions. So there's some information on how to do this here. Basically, each message that sits inside here becomes an object in a messages array. And this way, the AI knows a bit about the history. Now, we don't want to send it the new HTML every time, so it keeps having copies of it, because that's a ton of data that has to chunk through. So in our prompt, we basically say, this is the most recent data. This is the most recent piece of code, and we only send them that, plus all of the the text transactions. So if you say something like, make the increase the font size, and then it increases and you go too much, it still understands the concept of too much because it got the increase of font size. So so we assemble that, we send that off to OpenAI up to here. So what this assistant processor part here does, the code is actually doing, is it is starting from the top here, and we get the assistant, we get the message assistant type. We wanted to be able to use this assistant in multiple places in the app, right? So we built this as a component in BetterForms. So this little thing, Hassan, I don't know if he's on the call, but he built this as a component. And when we open this up, it actually knows where it's sitting, right? So where we invoke the component, we say that this is HTML, this is JSON, and so on. So for example, I can go over to JSON here, and I can say, create 2 more events. And I only have 2 events in here, but I want to use some fake data, but I don't have the data from the actual database. So it'll extrapolate from these existing events. I'll give it a second here. And in this particular case, we're saying you're a JSON editor, and this is the data that you're going to create. And you are, here's the existing JSON. So we're only sending it that. We're not sending it the code on this particular one. Excuse me. That information goes up to, that from the front end, it goes through utility hook. And we determine the type of invocation of the assistant. So is it JavaScript, is it HTML, or is it JSON so far? Then we reach out to our internal database and we fetch the prompting for that. And that prompt has some merge tags that are mixed in. So we kind of merge all of the prompting and everything together here. Where am I here? So there's my 2 new events. Let's just see here. Let's see if we can see them. So there it goes. So it's created these two extra events. It's kind of cool. It uses images from Unsplash. I'm not sure why this one here, that image is broken, but it's just a URL. And it created, open source festival and cloud computing essentials as fake data. So it's extended my fake data, which is the key there. All right. So so we reach out, we grab a prompt based on the type. And we also grab one other thing. We're taking advantage of a feature that OpenAI came out with about 6 months ago called functions. Functions are, I don't know if we have exactly, we've talked a little bit about it in the past, but basically a function is when you tell OpenAI, I want you to, quote, call this function. There's no real function there. It's just a definition. And I want you to call this function when the criteria warrants it. So you can make a function called get weather. And if I ask a question is what's my favorite color, it's not going to call that get weather. But if I ask a question like what is the temperature in Toronto, then it'll use the information that it picks out Toronto and the temperature, and it'll call the weather API. It'll parse that data that comes back as best it can, and then it'll display it to you. So that's the way functions work. We're using functions in the same way. We're basically saying when you return data, I want you to call a function called send this data to the user. Now, we don't actually have a function called send the data to user, but then the API realizes that it's supposed to format the data in a more deterministic fashion. So we place that call, the data comes back, and we send this message back out. Now, these things take a long time, right? Like the processing part of the assistant of OpenAI can take quite a while. It can GPT-4 is not nearly as fast as 3.5 turbo and some of the lower level engines. So that means that this hook that we ran here would time out normally. BetterForms has a 20-second timeout in the hook, and you don't want the user like blocked for 20 seconds. So what we do is we send the message out and we release the call. The hook comes back right away. It performs on the server as perform script on server, and it starts chunking away. So the server makes the call, the regular insert from URL, and it places that call. That can take as much time as it needs. When it comes back, we use BetterForms messaging. We've talked a little bit in the past about messaging in some of the past Friday lives, but basically the idea is that you can send a given tab or a group of users or any other type of group that you define. You can send messages, and the messages are just actions. So we just send the data back, and when the data comes back, we say what type of data, is it HTML or where it came from? It's always going to be coming from some editor. So we put that data back in the editor and we're done. So that's sort of the idea of how it works. Let's look at some other examples. Any questions about how those things work so far? Thanks, Anton. I'll leave that one there. I want to show you some other examples here too, and this time we'll kind of build it up in sequence here. Let's see. I have one of I whipped this up last night, and it is I went into FileMaker here and I created a products database, and I only have 4 products, and I went and grabbed some fake images for the products, curtains and leather jacket and golf visor and white cap. And I want to create some type of UI for that. So first I'm going to need an example of those products. Now, the way I can fetch this data here, let's start with that, is in my page, under integration, I have enable on form request, and that's going to call a hook called products. Okay, so on form request is on layout load. I go over to my database, and I have a folder called products. I've integrated this, just pasted this in, and we only have 2 lines of code. One is set variable products, and we're using a SQL query wrapper, just a custom function that's going to find all the products where the is published flag is true. So that will find all the products. This is a very common technique. And then I take those products and I stick them inside the $BF model under a key called products as a JSON array. Right, so that's BetterForms is going to pick this up when it runs the hook. So when the page first loads here, let me just save my page and preview. When my page first loads, it's going to fetch the data. Now I don't have any. I'm not displaying the data, but the data is in fact there, and there are my products there. Okay, so now let's build our product display. So this just comes down to basic prompting, because remember, we have that data sitting there as some examples. So we don't really have to do too much. So create a e-com product display. Let's start with that and just start really, really crude and see what we get. Has anybody used in the group here, has anybody used the OpenAI's API at all? One person? No. Sorry, I just saw a hand, but my Zoom's blocking out. Who is that? Oh, it's Rashad. Okay. It's not bad. They have a lot of technical problems, especially this past 2 weeks. There's a lot of things, but they will get ironed out. I feel fairly confident. They pretty much have to, because we have a lot of competition kind of creeping up. All right, so it's already created out of the box. I already realized it's responsive. So there's my products, and that's not too bad. Let's see what it looks like in my actual UI here. So I'm going to save this. My page refreshes, and there's my products display. I think that's pretty cool, right? This is pretty ugly. We'll change that maybe in a little bit, but there's my products. Again, I'd have to dial this in, because you can see I wouldn't want this looking like this. I'd probably want to make these descriptions all the same height. And we need to do something with this button. So if we wanted to do something with the button, let's see what it's done already. The AI already knows a little bit about named actions. So it's running a script called, or an action script in BetterForms called add to cart. And it's actually already passing the cart information, right? It's already actually passing that in there. So if I was to create one called, what was it called? Add to cart. So if I was to go into my action scripts, we'll create a new script called add to cart, and we'll just show an alert for now, and added to cart. This is one of the areas we're going to be talking about with Eduardo in a second, about fine tuning. And this is one of the areas that we want to add the AI assistant into. And at that point, you'll be able to say, I'm passing this object into the cart. I want you to do these items. I want you to call FileMaker. I want you to add it into an array or whatever, and it'll build out the actions for you. So we're kind of interested in that. Let's see here. Here. I do that correct. Okay, did that. Sorry, might have the wrong button here. Add to cart, alert, and add it to cart. Okay, so now when I click these buttons, it's running that action, and there's my add to cart. Right. Of course, we need a little bit of code to do that. So you could easily add that code in. The JavaScript or the function, the JavaScript editor is still kind of beta, still pretty early. I'm going to add a function in here. Let me create something for a cart. I haven't done this before, so bear with me on this one. I'm going to create an empty array for the cart, so somewhere it can go. And what are we passing in? We're passing in a product ID. It's only passing in a product ID. We probably want to pass the whole product. That would probably be more useful, I think. Just in case we want to show the cart and have some names and things like that. So I'm just going to change that. So we're passing in the whole thing. And then the JavaScript editor here, this one is not quite ready for prime time, but we did make it available. We would have to say something like action.options product has a product that needs to get added to the model.cart. We could sort of do something like that. Let's just see. I haven't done this one before, so bear with me if it falls on its face. Just because we haven't sort of dialed in the prompting. So this is interesting. It's actually kind of smart. What it's done here, and this is a common mistake we get a lot of support for, it's checking to see if model.cart exists for starters. I already created it ahead of time because I just know. But if not, it actually created an empty cart, which is a proper way to handle this. And then it pushed this onto the cart. Okay, so that's kind of cool. So I'm going to leave that at that. Let's actually keep going, see where we can go with this. Let's put a cart in here. So what we want is, so it's going to be model.cart, right? And let's go over to here. Let me grab an HTML block again. And let's go. This is a ecom cart. Create a simple cart that shows model.cart items. Let's try that. I don't have any items in there, but let's just see if that works and if it can create something like that. Again, in time and with your feedback, we can dial this in really, really, really well. But it's still crazy powerful. Okay, your cart is empty. Now, this is cool. What it's done is it's created an empty state, right, for my carts. And it's also got item name and item description. So I'm going to leave this at this. And let's save this. Save this. Refresh. Now my cart's going to be at the bottom. It's kind of a bad spot for the cart, but I'm going to add an item to the cart and bam, check this out. Now, if that doesn't blow your socks off, I don't know what does, but that's pretty cool. All right. There's a simple shopping cart. Now I'd probably take these two carts and change the UI and make it into a nice side tray and stuff like that. And then we could add a button now, right? And we could keep going with this. We can say add a button to remove from cart. And then we say, and then it'll create the named action. We have to go in and define what that action is. But I've done nothing but prompting to build this cart here. In fact, the most technical coding I did was over in FileMaker, which was these actual lines of code here, right? And then everything else is there. So that is some of the capabilities of what we can do. Any questions on that so far? All right. Let me jump to another example. And this one's kind of cool here. This is what I did here. Let me just blow this out again. And the reason I just created this, I just wanted to make sure I'm not going to demonstrate something that's totally way off base. All right. So I wanted to make like a little dashboard because that's a common thing, right? Some kind of metrics dashboard. So I went over to the AI assistant and I said, create some sample metrics because I didn't have any metrics in my demo database. So, and I said it's for a financial company, right? Because you have to have some scope. So I created customer satisfaction, employee headcount, and some various things like this. Then we go over to here and we can say something like create a colorful metrics dash for my financials, something like this. All right, so we got that data. Now, normally this data would come from FileMaker, right? But I don't have anything over here. And I'm sorry you have to wait 30 seconds to generate all this code. So I'll tell you how, while we're doing it, while it's coming back here, I'll tell you what we're going to be doing is now we know that this is pretty viable and it's pretty useful, is we'll add a small Lambda function that will sit in here. And basically the function that we add it'll sort of sit over here. And what will happen is OpenAI will talk to this Lambda function. Actually, I might already have this drawn here. No, I don't. And that will stream the data directly back into the BetterForms API, into the Messages API. And then by doing that, we'll be able to see the little prompts going across and returning data in that fashion. All right. Oh, that's pretty colorful. That's a little too colorful, but it definitely works. Okay, so let's change that. Make the colors more softer. Is it pastel? Is that it? Something like that. And I'll give that a second. So anyhow, we'll add that in, and then that way the data can stream in real time, and that'll make you feel better about waiting. But we wanted to get this out the door so that you guys can start getting some benefit from it. I have noticed this API takes different lengths of time to return, depending on how overloaded I think it is. So there we go. That's not too bad there. But there's still something fundamentally wrong. Anybody know what's wrong with these numbers? They're not formatted, right? Right. So revenues in dollars. So format revenue in dollars. Revenues. I'm going to say revenues. See if it gets net income and loan value. Revenues in dollars. And what else? I think that's not too bad. We'll leave it at that. Let's try that. This is something that's kind of interesting. The assistant knows about what libraries are available in BetterForms. So it can take advantage of things like Moment.js and Numeral and Lodash and other libraries like that. All right, let's see. No, sorry, that was me. Okay, so it didn't put the thousands in there. It didn't get the thousands. It just actually did add the $sign in there. So I wonder if it hard coded the $sign. Let me just check. It's using numeral to format the numbers. Right. So that's fine. But we could go in and we could say format them as thousands and so on and so on. So I hope it gives you a bit of an idea. So let me save that. Oops. Save that. Save. And there's our metrics display right out of the box. What do you guys think?
Are y'all going to be in Austin?
Great question. At the moment, no. Should we be?
Yes.
Yeah, we should. I know. I've been kicking around. So we might pull the trigger. We'll have to decide ASAP because I don't even know if there's booths and things like that left. But that might be a good event to go to and to participate in. We didn't do it because I didn't find out about the booth till quite late, so wasn't able to really plan for it, but maybe we should anyway. And then you can nominate us for an award, Beverly. All right. I think I'm going to leave it at that. I'll just show you some other things I created with just prompts, zero coding as well. I'll just show you really quick here, and then we'll jump into something else. I made this Kanban. I said first generate some stats for a typical software project management, and then create a Kanban. And that was only 2 prompts, one for the data, one for the UI. And I thought, then I went and tried it and said, oh, it's not responsive. That's weird. So an easy thing to do is to turn it into a responsive UI, and then it actually groups them really nicely. It did a really good job with it. I didn't save that though. So that was one thing. I thought this was kind of neat. I posted in our random channel earlier this week somewhere. I posted random. Where is it? Random. There. I posted in a random channel this blog, and this is a person I follow because I like her content. And she says, here's a typical software interview question, and she made a type ahead, right? The type ahead search, and it's like, wow, it was so brutally hard, all the stuff that she did. And it was like a high level question to do that because it's technically challenging. So I figured, okay, let me make one up. Let me see if I can do one, and how long it took me. It took me about 12 minutes. And mostly because I had to write this script over in FileMaker. So I have a people table, and I'll show you how it works in a second, but I have a simple people table. And here, I grab a query, I go to a layout, perform a conventional FileMaker find, so I can search on a number of different fields, first name, last name, and age. And then if I have a found count over 50, I truncate the first 50 records and omit the last part of the records. And then I pass the data onto FileMaker and out the door. And then this is what we end up with at preview. So I asked AI to create me an empty state, and it just puts an empty state and says there's no characters found. But if I go CH A and hit find, here's my results coming from FileMaker. And this was done purely, 100% with prompts. Even this input box as well. So Charles, let's try Andrew. We need to hit enter, right? There's no auto enter, but we can fix that easy enough. And here's all the ones with that. And if I wanted to find certain ages, 27. Right. The reason the images load slightly later is because they're coming from a placeholder site that doesn't serve the images all that fast. Right. That's the only reason there. But that's all data coming from this people table over here in FileMaker. And there's 1,000 people in here. So if you search for Zorine, Z-O-R-I, there they are. There's that record right here. Right. Super easy to build this kind of stuff. This was already easy to build, but it was like crazy easy this time. Like I built this in 12 minutes, this UI. And the best thing is it's 100% customizable. Like the funny thing is it kind of looks like Clara Studio right here because of the colors. But this is 100% customizable, and that's the main difference, right? We can do anything we want here from going forward now. All right, so I'm going to leave it at that. That is our AI assistant. I hope you like it and try it out and experiment and build some really cool stuff. If you build something really cool, please do tell us. Really appreciate it. One quick last tip, though, I found when I was building this is I didn't want to build this all as one big chunk, one big monolith of code. So what I did is I broke it down and I just added 3 blocks. I took an empty template page from BetterForms and there's an HTML block here, another one for the search bar, and one for the one for the results. And I basically said when I created this one here, I said, the prompt I gave it was, you're a search input box, create a search input box, add the words search personnel as a placeholder. And I also said, I didn't actually say hit enter, but you could add, hit enter to find it. What it'll do is wrap this in a form so you can hit enter in already. So HTML and with Vue in behind you and underneath, you can get pretty far without writing any code now, going forward. But this was a good method for building these kinds of pages that I found to be quite good. All right, I'm going to leave it at that, and see we got some. Maybe we have some questions. We will. We'll make a judgment call on going to Austin. I should think we should. We were at the last live FileMaker one. All right. I'm glad you guys like it. Thank you. And we'll leave it at that. I want to stop my share for a quick second, or actually we'll jump into this here again. So I want to bring Eduardo on and just talk about one other thing that we've been kind of experimenting with. And this is not really, this is not part of the BetterForms editor. This is just stuff that you can do in FileMaker. And talk about a use case that we had. And for fine tuning, we have a product that does some collaboration with the movie industry, and we've talked about it before. You've seen some Pearson featuring some UI and Hassan over the years or over the months on different Friday Lives, and basically we have a need. And Eduardo wrote some really neat code, and looking back, it's actually pretty decent. He wrote some. He wrote a state machine. A state machine is basically, for the most part, a bunch of conditional statements. And what it did is it went through a script, a movie script you can see on the side here, and it would figure out based on the type of text and the caps and is there a number in it, and what the preceding line is. It would figure out what each one of these rows is. And this is a scene from Better Call Saul, I think. And it had reasonably good. Eduardo, what do you think the accuracy would be about approximately? Like, or even one out of how many lines would have a mistake?
It's an average. It's hard to tell because as a state machine, if one line is wrong, it's going to be wrong for the next few lines, right? Until it actually comes back. But it really depends how the script is formatted. Like if it's a very well formatted script, it was quite precise. I would say, I don't know, even like 80%, 90% maybe.
Right.
Then if it's not, then it would go downhill for like 70, 60 maybe. But
right.
I don't think we actually got down to 60. It was pretty good.
Right. Yeah, I think so. And we didn't really tune it up all that much manually. Like we adjusted the code a couple times, maybe in a couple iterations, and then more or less just left it. Yeah. So it was okay, but it still not accurate enough. So we wanted something that's more accurate. So Eduardo's been working on version 2 of the classifier. And Eduardo, you want to jump in and basically talk about what it does and how it works?
The classifier?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Or the fine tuning.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess the same thing, right? So we started off as version 2. The version 1 of this was just a state machine. And I don't know if we've ever talked about how a looping state machine kind of works, or there's different kind of mechanisms for building these things. But basically the idea is that if you know, like in Canada, we have postal codes that are letter, number, letter, number, letter, number. All right, so it's 2 groups of 3 characters. And the state machine, if you wanted to verify that, if you were going to write that, you would say if the first letter is a number, if the first character is a letter, then the next one must be a number. And then if that one's a number, the next one must be a letter. And you would sort of cycle like that. It's very simple, but that's how one way you could do something like that to determine if the postal code was valid. And then if you wanted to include American postal codes, which 90210 is 5 letters, 5 numbers, I think there's some more stuff in there too, but you would say if the second one is a number and the first one is a number, then all of the rest of them must be numbers. So the state machine would sort of iterate and it would go down this branch, if you will, and now it has to be all numbers. Then you know it's a US postal code. So that's sort of how that worked. And you can get pretty good with that. But we wanted to incorporate something more because we want to be able to take this product a lot further in terms of technology and take advantage of some AI stuff. So your original Eduardo, your original fine tuning was based on 3.5?
3.5 turbo, yeah.
And
That's what's currently recommended to fine tune. Even like the new 4 is more like a beta now, I think, phase. So we just used what was the most recommended for the moment.
Right.
And
can you talk about what fine tuning is?
Fine tuning, it's basically the basic idea is to customize or make the model a bit better for your use case. Because GPT is like a very generic model, so you can pretty much prompt anything. And the idea for fine tuning is that it gets more accurate, like more accurate results for a specific use case.
You mentioned that it was faster as well.
I felt that it was a bit faster, yeah, like learning. After I fine-tuned the model, comparing to the original model, it was, yeah, the numbers are there, like it was 40%, around 40% faster, so.
Right, so that's quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
Right, so we went from being able to convert, and this was is this on a per page level?
It's per page, yeah.
Right, so you're basically taking a 1 page of movie script, sending it to OpenAI and saying, classify this response and generate a response that tells you what line is what. So this top line where it says teaser, well, that's like a header, I guess, of some sort. And there's a scene with a set information there, scene 1. And then there's descriptors. And how many different types of classifications are there about?
Oh, that's about, I think we're doing like 9 or 10.
Right. Okay. And are you returning the whole script when you do that? Like in the response?
Yeah, so we minimize a little bit the object. For now, we're returning just the line, like line ID for each line that we're attaching ID for it, and the classification. So we don't use as many tokens. But when we send it, yeah, we're sending the whole object. So we have it separate, organized as an array with like the line with the text itself, the ID, and then X and Y position, but that we can cut it off actually too, to reduce the size, because that's how OpenAI charges, like by tokens. So the more you send, the more you charge.
Right. And I guess that takes takes longer too, right?
It takes longer to train, yeah.
Right. And that's something we were looking at into the editor, the AI editor, is we don't, like, a lot of times when we say like make the text bold, it doesn't need to return the entire HTML. We don't return the JSON that we send, but we certainly don't really need to return all that HTML. So we're looking at ways of individual, like taking each line in the editor of your code and basically says line 1, line 2, and then AI would come back and say change line 1 and line 7, and here's a new line. That kind of an idea. And that's considerably less data that has to come back, so it doesn't have to prompt that much, and then it ends up being faster. What about so for fine tuning? Do you have any examples of data or anything? Do you want to share?
Sure. Fine tuning, I might not have as much.
Or any kind of UIs, not UI, but visuals that'll help sort of give everybody a bit better of an idea.
Yeah, so I have here everything's done by just API call. So I've been doing everything with Postman actually. And this is what we would have. I could open. It looks pretty ugly though, but I could open some. I wasn't expecting to open. Let me grab this. These actually.
Yeah, you know, even it's just sort of the concepts.
Yeah.
I guess maybe if you explain what your normal route, the cycle is, you send the script off to OpenAI, and then you get back some errors.
Yeah, that would be like how we would build our data set. So I would start by sending it to OpenAI with their original model, so just a 3.5 turbo, and getting the results back and comparing with the original script and see where the model didn't get it right. And that's how I start building this here. Let me just make it JSON so it looks a bit better. So this is what we use to train. They call JSON L. So it line of this text, this text file is a valid JSON, and it's just the regular
It was basically JSON-L
message.
That's just JSON objects without the square braces on the end, commas in between.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So then you have the message that you're sending, the role. For now, our prompt is like just a system message that says what it's expected to do, and the user, it's what we're sending it. I won't show too much there because there's actually the script lines there. So the user content is that's what we're sending. It's the lines with the text and what I showed before. And so it looks like the same here. It's just that it's a bunch of different lines there. So then this is just a sample script that I have. So it doesn't have issues with copyright. And then, yeah, this would be how we're sending it, the lines, everything is stringified. So that's why it looks kind of ugly. But then we would get this file and send it for training, and it would be up there. The time I checked, it took like 6 hours for the training with the recommended amount of data. Like they say you can fine tuning a model with like minimum 10 samples, but they recommend between 50 to 100. So what I did, I got like a little over 70 samples, so I could separate them like the 70-30 ratio, like 70 for training and
when you send the other
30 for validation. Or
when you send the validation ones, does it take that into account, or does it produce some metric at the end that says, okay, this is how accurate it is based on your validation, or do you just keep those yourself, or do you you have to manually test them afterwards?
No, you can retrieve those metrics. Let me see if I have something here. Or the fine tuning.
I should note
you can list our fine tuned jobs.
The fine tuning is there is an additional cost for that. It's, in fairness, it's nothing compared to the overall cost of what you're getting out of it, but it's maybe $5 of fine tuning, something like that. So it's a little bit more expensive than like just API calls because you're using compute time for however many hours.
Yeah, here it's not saying the accuracy and all that, but it returns some metrics when how long it took and all that. But yeah, but I think you can fetch that data somewhere, but it's not showing here.
So then manually go back, and after you got the data back from the fine-tuned model, and you rerun, I guess, some random examples. I guess you can't really run the exact examples that you sent in to fine-tune because those ones are fit.
They're ready. Yeah. Then it wouldn't be a good metric. So yeah, I always have some extra ones that I don't use for training. So when the training is done, I can test with those to see how accurate it is.
Right.
But yeah, the process is that I have my prompt here, I send it, and a few seconds it's back. This is what it returns. So it's a lot smaller because there's a lot less data.
And that just converted a page then, a classified one whole page?
Yeah, this is the whole page.
So typical script has, say, 100 pages. So how do you handle that?
Now we're parallelizing the call. So what we have running dev now, it's only making 10 pages in parallel because it does reach the limits for like tokens per minute that OpenAI sets for each kind of account. So yeah, that was the limit that we were able to do when we were uploading 2 different scripts. But actually, as I'm talking, I'm thinking now we are just uploading one at a time now. But anyways, but yeah, 10 pages. But when I was testing, not in the actual app, I was able to send the whole script at once in parallel, like it would parallelize itself, and it was working fine. But yeah, we do have to send like batches, otherwise it reached the limit and it won't do the classification.
I'd like to
So-
generate. If anybody, I don't know if anybody in the community has built a database that'd be good for training that you could just use a generic, like you build all your sample sets and it sends it off and trains it, and then you can create another set and do some analytics. I think that'd be a great little app. I don't know if there is any software like that, but it seems like it'd be a really good use case for the industry.
Yeah, for this I haven't seen much, but therefore other
I'd like to generate
kind of things.
some ones for different editors, even for the JSON editor. Well, the JSON editor is pretty good on its own, but like the HTML one, just to teach it a little bit more about, hey, here's a way you could, if the user asks you to, sort the contacts by first name, it could do it right in the UI. Just some examples like that so our developers community doesn't have to prompt as much. I think that would be really useful.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody have any other use cases themselves for finely tuning any type of data models in OpenAI or any LLM for that matter? Okay.
Sorry, Charles. This is Vince.
Hey, Vince.
Hey, sorry, I've been multitasking here, getting my kids ready for some activities. So I've been listening, but haven't been posting or anyway, one thing I wanted to say is it would be great to have some reading resources where, to kind of simplified understanding of how the training goes about getting trained and, all that kind of stuff. So if you have any links to that or
Yeah.
anyone on your team.
The docs are okay. There's
Yeah.
a fair bit on YouTube actually.
Yeah.
Videos and things.
Specific to ChatGPT and that sense?
Yeah. On fine training OpenAI's API.
Yeah. I end up
Okay.
using their docs. I don't think I use any other link. I was able to follow their docs and start training and yeah.
Okay, cool.
For the
I'll take a
most
look
part,
at
though,
it.
it's not too bad. You basically give it
No.
the prompt and the result and a whole bunch of them and send it off.
Mm-hmm.
Does it, you don't set the number of epochs, the number of cycles that it trains, do you? That's done automatically?
No, it is like they recommend not changing that like right off the bat unless you actually know what you're doing,
Yeah.
because it can affect pretty bad. Like you can overfeed your model pretty quickly, so it's not ideal. And it's just a fine tuning, so it's like more like towards like the end of the stuff, so you shouldn't need too many anyways. And oh yeah, I guess I never mentioned, like you do need to say, of course, what's the expected result by the end of that line, like of each line of those JSON objects. I had the expected result. So like what the correct one would be for that specific object. And at first, yeah, I forgot to mention that too. We started by sending from a script, for example. So let's say it got the first line here wrong. I was sending the next two with as part of the training saying, so you messed up this line was wrong, but the next two are this, like classified as whatever action. And that's how we started. But we saw that it was kind of biasing the model for, like, especially in the beginning, to get things wrong, because the prompt says you get one page at a time and classify it and all that. So the model was getting biased to misclassify the beginning of some pages. So what we started doing is actually sending the whole page. So we do send more data now, but the accuracy is a lot better because it has more context and see what's going on and how each line interfere with the next and all that. So that was another thing too. Sometimes you have to send more data because it will help the model understand better your problem.
At EngageU, Ian Jepson, who is living in the UK, and I think he's got a couple talks online already as well. Sorry about that. He had a talk about tokenizing things like scripts and stuff, which is a slightly different use case, and we'll talk about that, like how you can tokenize large bodies of data. It's a slightly different scenario than what we're doing here. This is classification, but there's some good talks from different people in our FileMaker community on this kind of stuff too. We're not inventing any wheels here on that, but we just wanted to share our early findings, and looking at a real world use case that we couldn't do a year ago easily anyway. Now we can do it relatively easily, is to convert this. So this code is going to end up going into our dev branch this week. So cool. Thanks, Alberto.
Yeah, no problem.
I just want to mention, I don't know if he mentioned overfitting there, and I'm not sure if, let me find my Zoom here. I'm not sure if everybody understands what that is, if you know. So if I'm downsplaining it too much, let me know. But let's say you have a real simple linear regression model, and you got a bunch of can I do this? Yeah, little bunch of little scatter plots. I got a plot here and here and here and here and here and here. And if you've done in linear regression in school, you end up coming up with a straight line that kind of goes, I'm trying to do this with my mouse, goes like that. And you say, okay, well, that's not bad. Right, that's not bad. So if I extrapolate a point here, this is my value over here, and it's reasonably accurate, because there's kind of these sort of overall ranges. And then with the fitting, what it does is it says, well, these are real points. So then the fitting starts to create this more complex model. So I'm going to sort of see if I can do this here. Kind of like, this is not a good example here. Let me just try to do this again. There. So it tries to get this kind of model that sort of looks like that. So this one, my secondary model is much more. It's like a polynomial type of thing here. It's a more complex model, and then overfitting tends to do this type of thing here. Is if you keep training it on the same pieces of data and you don't give it enough randomness in the data, it tends. Oops, come on. The model tends to sort of look like this. All right, it starts to let me see there. It starts to fit that model. So it's perfect model for those points that you gave it, right? And if I make it really perfectly fit, it would go like this. And it fits the exact points, the exact pieces of training data that you used would fit in perfectly. But the problem is, if there was a point right here, which is really where the model should return, the error is really, really off. So we sacrifice the area of the many for the area of the few, or the error, sorry, of the few. So that's what sort of the overfitting is going on there. And that's something that if you don't have enough pieces of data and you keep training and training and training it, it learns that. There's a I think Eduardo, you said you just found this out. They wanted the cure for cancer.
Oh, that's a classic example, yeah. Where they trained like a model to see if the image had like the patient had a cancer with the image exam, and then they thought they found something, but then in the end, all the images were saying on the bottom, like in words, like whether there was something or not. So
you got this image, whatever thing, and then there's a little text at the bottom that says, there's some text written at the bottom here that said whether the patient had cancer or not, and the AI was seeing that and reading this, and they thought, oh well, this is great, everything's solved. Meanwhile, it's not so much. So all right, awesome, thank you. Any questions about that? All right, we're going to jump to our draw here, and each month, I should say, we give away some prizes. I know a shipment just went out, so a bunch of people got some stuff. If you haven't, it's on its way out, probably in the back of my car in an envelope, but it will get sent very soon. So the way this one works is if you're in the meeting, and you're not the team, because that's like a third of us in here, I think. Then you win a prize. All right. And Russell, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey man, how you doing? Congratulations, you're a double winner. So I get some different swag for you.
I was just gonna, or you can give mine up to somebody that hasn't got it.
Really? You want us to? We can. I don't mind.
Absolutely, yeah, man.
Yeah, you sure? Did you get yours? Did you get your stuff?
No, not yet.
Okay.
It's on its way. I know.
We do have it. I remember seeing the envelope and everything sticker. So
it's the giving season. Let somebody else get something.
Okay, thanks, buddy. Eventually, there's not going to be any different ones. All right, Paul. Paul in the call?
Paul's in here. I don't know if he's.
I don't know. Do you got me mic on? What's the rule on that?
I'm here. You already took care of it, so yeah, play it forward.
That's okay. We get different swag. That was for something else. So that was guest swag. That was different. Okay, great. So Madalena will make note of that, and we'll get something out to you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. All right, we're going to finish up today. We're going to kick around. If you got any more questions, play around with the editor and things like that. But thank you, everybody, and have yourself a great holiday. And we'll see you next month. Next month we have our holiday. What is it? Best of what we built in a year show. So we're going to be looking for people who have built some really cool stuff to show and tell over the next for the next Friday Live. So thanks a lot, and we'll see you next month.